Welcome, everybody, to Con Culture Podcast. We are in 2024. We're doing a review of Marvel's Echo. It's our first review of the year, and it was a ride to say the least. First off, if you don't know what Echo is, it's a television series based on a Marvel comic book written by Joe Quesada and David Mack, starring Alekwa Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio as Maya and once again Wilson Fisk. So they're reprising their roles from the Hawkeye series and even further from the Netflix series. We'll get into that. But yeah, it was a series on Disney Plus and Hulu. It's their first venture really into original TVMA content. This is something that you had to adjust your viewing settings to watch if you wanted to watch on Disney Plus. But yeah, we're gonna dive into all the characters and great cast and the moments we loved, the moments we hated. But we're gonna talk about Echo. Trey, you start us off. What did you think of the plot?
It was definitely an interesting plot. I'm not too familiar with her origin story in the comic
Mm-hmm.
book world, at least. The only bit I've gotten of this character, is like we said in the Hawkeye series, and it was so cool seeing her return. The overall plot, it was kind of hard to get a vibe of what the story was going to be about at the beginning, especially from the beginning opening scene. You're like, who are
Yeah.
these characters? Where are we right now? And then to find out, like, oh, this is the origin of not only this character but her people. And I,
Yes.
I just loved how we dived in there right at the gate. And then once you realize what there was, like, whoa, that was really, really cool. But as we went on throughout the plot, this was like, okay, is this going to be a revenge story? Is this going to be like a full, like, come home and find yourself kind of story? And then the more we got into it, it's like it was a bit of both.
Yeah, it was. And what about the characters in this film? What were your thoughts on the characters?
It's really hard not to be biased with one of the characters in this show, mainly because like he's one of my favorite characters to cosplay right now, even though I have a full head of hair. Um, Seeing Wilson Fisk come back, he's like, when we see him in Hawkeye, it's like, is he dead? And then we have the
Yo,
post-credit scene. It's like, okay, he's got an IV dripping. Like, is he a vegetable? Like, what are we coming back? Are we gonna get a cyborg kingpin here? Like, what are we doing? It was just so cool seeing him come back and then interact with Maya and Echo again.
yes. And just before we dive any further into the show, there will be spoilers in this review.
Yes.
So you've been warned. This is spoilery as it gets. We've both seen all 5 episodes to completion. If you haven't, go do it and make up your own mind after that. You can come
And then
back
come
and
back.
watch. Yeah, then come back and watch. My thoughts on the plot and the characters were it was a mixed bag for me. I think 4 episodes of this series were amazing, and then it went full Game of Thrones and just did not stick the landing whatsoever. Like the characters were good for 4 episodes. I cared about them. They were interesting. They were intriguing. There was conflict between several of the characters. Maya was a badass for 4 fucking episodes. I mean, she's still a badass in the fifth, but they took it almost in an entirely different direction. So the plot is going one way. You have this narrative. She's this alone individual who's lost everyone. Echo was, for 4 episodes, estranged from her family, and this conflict between her and Fisk was being masterfully told. Like these two were on a collision course. They were aiming for each other, they were gunning for each other. Like it was serious. And you felt the tension, the stakes were nice. For 4 episodes, I was in, but then they dropped the ball at the end. So the plot initially was good, but it seems like they just switched gears in the 5th episode and went with a whole different plot. All the character development we were getting was just kind of washed out. Like grandma's built up the whole episode. Chula's like this, do not mess with her. And I can't tell if she's a boss, like a crime boss too, or if she's just a scary grandmother, both of which have the same intimidation and power.
Hmm.
It's just, so I like the mystery of it. Everybody they did what Chula said. And then they kind of just rapidly went through that in episode 5. So a stark 180, and it was hard and jarring. So yeah, the plot for me, it was great for 4 episodes, and then it wasn't. So
It's like, yeah, I get how like a life-threatening situation could help bring people together, but at the same time, it's like
yes,
you were literally like so done with your grandma like a few hours ago, and then now it's
yes,
like your BFFs. It's just like
yes,
there would still be, some
it
tension there, I feel
it
like.
would not glaze over as easily as it did,
Yeah.
and yeah, it felt rushed. It felt rushed, and it didn't feel authentic enough. I get what they were trying to do, but they
Yeah.
didn't stick the landing, like I said.
One of my favorite character analysis, like, and you touched on it briefly, so I won't dive into too much. But like you said, this masterful storytelling between Fisk and Maya. It's like she
Yes,
literally tried to kill him, and he comes back with open arms, like, "Hey, I forgive you. It's fine. Hey, better
that
yet,
was
let's
jarring.
talk." It's like, let's talk. And here, I'm going to put this thing in your eye so you can see me talk to you, and then we don't have to have an interpreter anymore.
I love how she interpreted it, though.
Yeah,
You didn't care enough to learn sign.
yeah, exactly, exactly. It's just like
It
you just
was
used your money to just cut corners and get what you want, and that's true Kingpin fashion, which I loved about that. But even then, it was like he handed her was going to hand her like this whole plate of like, you can be Queenpin, you can have
yeah.
your own empire, you can have your own war, you can have whatever you want. But being Kingpin still, you kind of like walking on eggshells. Like, does he really want that, or does he want to keep using her again, using her
Is he
amazing
being a
combat
master
skills?
manipulator, or is he being
Yes,
vulnerable and open? You can't
exactly.
tell.
You could not tell, and that was the beauty of Vincent D'Onofrio's performance with that. So absolutely
Yes.
loved that. Another relationship you also touched on is like Grandma Chula, such a stern-looking woman. Like, she's obviously the head of that family, and
Yes.
that's even like what her her former husband
Yeah.
and former brother, son-in-law all said about her. Is like, she ruined that family with her anger and resentment,
Yeah.
and just showing how much that drove the rest of the family away, especially her granddaughter, like the closest thing to
Mm-hmm.
her daughter that she has left. It was heart-wrenching to
It
watch.
was.
Even though they had all that, it was still cool. Even though it was a little bit rushed, it was
Mm-hmm.
amazing how they had this moment where they were truly sharing each other's lineage, their ancestors,
Yes.
and becoming a true relationship that you should have with your grandmother, like
Yeah.
honoring your history.
Not just the relationship with the grandmother, but I think where they dropped the ball also was her relationship with Bonnie, her cousin
Oh,
Bonnie. Like,
they started so
there's
cute
like
at the beginning. It's like,
exactly,
look at these two cute little
exactly.
girls. They're playing in the rain. They want hot chocolate, and then all of a sudden, it's like, I get like time drifts apart, and they kind of played with that a little bit. It's like, no, we didn't
They
drift
didn't dive in
apart. You
enough.
lift. It's like, again, like this should have been 8 episodes at least,
Yes.
so you could
Yes,
dive in
because
these
it would have been
moments. You can
great
have these
story.
redemptions. Yeah,
She's
there
too
should
good
have
of
been
an
more
actress to just
tensions.
be a throwaway.
Yeah, exactly. There should have been so many moments where they were crossing paths.
Yeah, they
It
had one
was,
spat, and then it was kind of like, all right,
we're both
we
tied up here
survived.
together. Yeah.
Yeah. You could have taken Bonnie out of the story, and it wouldn't affect anything.
To me, the
And
vibe
that's
was a
sad.
lot. To me, the vibe a lot, like especially with Bonnie, with half her family, it's like, I forgive you, but I'm mad at you still, and it's just like,
Yes.
mm.
Mm.
But to me, that doesn't work with the rest of the show, and we'll dive into that when we
No.
talk about messages and themes.
Yeah, and even with her dad, like I think they
Oh,
could have done more with that amazing actor. We could have gotten more
yes,
backstory. We just got a couple scenes, and I get it. He died in Hawkeye, but we could have got some flashbacks. We could have got more character out of him. Like we have an amazing native cast, and we know they're amazing if we've watched Reservation Dogs,
oh
where they
yes,
kill it. In a comedic show, we have these intense dramatic moments. So we know what the characters could do, and they didn't use them to their full potential. A couple, yes. Alekwa Cox, mwah, loved her as Maya.
yes.
Chula, the character was amazing. So two of them, they really gave them the runway to run with. Even the grandpa was a great
Oh,
character.
he was hysterical.
Yes, he was fun. He was light, but not ridiculous. And Biscuits. I loved Biscuits the entire show. He
Oh, I
was a
love
great
biscuits.
comedic relief, but he was also
Biscuits and Billy
endearing.
Jet.
Yes, that duo was hilarious. They were funny, but they were also characters that were endearing. The visual and special effects, though, what were your thoughts on
Oh,
the practical digital effects of this show?
I guess my favorite visuals, and I don't mean this as a pun, but like was the lack
Mhm.
of audio throughout some of the show. How
When
the
they
editor
sucked
chose
the
like we're
sound
just
out of a
it's like
scene,
we're gonna take the sound out. It's like we're gonna give you Maya's perspective real quick, what it's like being in the scene, and it's like just how much we take for granted being able to hear and talk and see and everything, and just be able to pick up the vibe instantly in a room where she has to pick up the vibes in different ways, like seeing what
yeah,
other people are
visual cues,
doing.
seeing
Exactly.
expressions and faces,
Yes.
and she's not able to read lips too well,
Yeah.
judging from her interactions with other
I think enough to
characters.
get by.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, when they take the sound away or someone's back is to her and they're having discussions about her, she's
Mhm.
just like,
What
what
do
are
you
you
say?
saying? What are they
Yep.
saying? She's relying on others in order to get by, and I love that too. that was a great effect, an audio effect that just sucked it out. You hear the dialogue and then it fades, fades, and then you're in the silence with her.
And then like they'll put in this great musical track right afterwards to like help further like the hype of that scene.
Yes.
Or better yet, when it's like these slow dialogue scenes where it's like they're just sign language the whole time.
Yes.
And then they slowly bring up the music and everything. Because, like, honestly, if you walked in that room, you wouldn't hear a thing. You would hear them, like, kind of talking under their breath as they're signing.
Yes.
But I think it was beautiful every time they did that.
And they did a better job of showing the signs being shown on screen. A thing they did in Hawkeye a lot is they were signing, but it was to someone's back. And they still do that at moments in the show. But the majority of it, you can see the signs. So if you are a person who knows ASL, you can appreciate it. And kind of like when I watch Spanish movies, I don't need the subtitles. I know what's going on, but it's cool to have both. And I'm consuming it two different ways. So it's that for individuals who know ASL. So the show did a better job with that. Any other practical digital effects that stood out to you?
I love how like they would kind of show like, I guess the echo between the lineages. It was like kind of like this cave pool water and like get to seeing her one ancestor like braiding her hair and everything.
Yes.
And who wanted to be the light horseman. That was another favorite part where they took this whole story and they're like, hey, let's turn it into a silent movie. Like from the early 1900s. And it's like,
that was a very cool effect. Just cue
that
cards.
So much. Yeah. Like bang.
Action. Bang. Oh, it was totally cool black and white film. Oh, yeah, that was a great effect. Practical effects that I liked were the action sequences, the weapons, the explosions. I want to assume the majority of that was practical because it was interacting with people. The flare would be shining off their suit. Like when the door blows off, they went in, the smoke, the one shot that they did going into the room. I am a fan of that type of cinematography, especially when Daredevil's involved. If there's a one shot, oh man, I'm licking my chops.
I loved how we had that backstory with her from all of Hawkeye and Daredevil just at the very beginning. It's like, here's how you know
catching everybody up. That was good editing. I was okay with that. I was okay with people being caught up on who she is and what's going on. But that interaction with Daredevil for me was chef's kiss. Chef's
I've been watching them all night. And you guys come in and ruin it.
The practical effects team nailed it. His suit looked great. She looked great. Like all of it was so good. And I'm so glad they made him acrobatic, just like in the comics.
Oh, yes.
A little more acrobatic than he was in the gritty Daredevil series. So we got a bit of that grit, but we also combined that with the acrobatics that Daredevil is known for. Like in the comics, this dude is jumping off of buildings ballet style, like Assassin's Creeding off of shit.
Oh, yeah.
He's parkouring everywhere, and we got that in this. And he has a little bit of superhuman ability in it because he just hops that fence, dodges the bullet, but it looks cool and believable and practical. So the stunt team did an amazing job. And even the digital effects, like you said, the ancestral plane where they're barely coming onto Earth and becoming human, the Choctaw people, the origin story being told.
Those peeling off of their skin.
Those weren't cheesy. They weren't too cheesy. It didn't get cheesy until the final scene when everybody's hands start glowing. And I did not like the costumes in episode 5. Again, this is just going to be the theme in the review. 4 episodes of great practical effects, digital effects. And then episode 5, it's like they just phoned it in and they needed to wrap it up. So it's a sad thing, but what are your thoughts on the themes and the messages that were conveyed through the storytelling here?
For me, the 2 biggest themes and messages that I got out of this series were how you handle your past demons and then how to get rid of the anger that you're holding on to.
Yes.
And it's so hard and it's so different for every single one of us because we have our reasons. Like for a lot of people, like for Kingpin, it's like this anger and this fear makes me who I am, to the point where like he still carries around the hammer that he killed his own father with.
It's a bit of a safety blanket for him.
For real. And it's his mind. It's like, no, this is who I am. I'm a killer. I take my freedom and I take it violently.
Yes.
And I loved that. And then I loved at the end where it's cheesy with the effects and Ramaya's trying to heal him. Not only like just like first I'm like, oh, is she gonna heal his eye? Like that'd be kind of cool. It's like, no, she's trying to heal his inner child, which just blew me away. Like we see him in his childhood bedroom looking at the wall that he has just immortalized,
just having a breakdown.
Having an absolute breakdown. Like he's on the verge of tears. And then Maya telling him, like, give me the hammer. Like, you don't need this. And it's like, I loved that. That was a beautiful moment. It's like how you don't need to hold on to that anymore. And then finally, the huge confrontation at the kitchen table with Chula, like how she's talking about, like, for years, I've resented your father. I couldn't bear to see you because you just remind me so much of my daughter. Like, my heart shattered when your mother died. Like, I wanted to die, and it's just heart wrenching to watch. But at the end of the day, like, her former husband helps her realize, like, do you want to lose the little family you have left by holding on
Yeah.
to this anger? And
Yep.
like that's kind of her aha moment. It's like, you're right. Like, I don't want to lose my granddaughter. I need to get with it. I need to talk with her. And
And they
unfortunately,
bond over the birth of her
yes,
mother.
yes. And it was such a beautiful scene where they do that flashback and everything. It's like, we're going to take you out of the white man hospital. We're going to take you into the woods, and like, we're going to bring you to the midwife, and we're going to bring you into this world. And it was an ordeal. Like, it was such a beautiful story. And then
Yep.
it sucks how that conversation didn't end the way it was, they both wanted it to, or at least grandma wanted it to.
Yeah.
And then again, that just kind of cheapen it again. The next episode, they're just like, oh, okay, we're cool now. We're not going to have a nice moment anymore. And it's just like, I'm sorry, I need
Exactly.
like another 2 episodes of them interacting and
Yes.
bursting through that wall that's still kind of up there that they're both still holding on to, or at least one of them is still holding on to.
Yeah. I
And
don't get
like
it.
some people
It
could
doesn't
debate,
make
like,
sense to
oh, she
me.
kind of has that moment when she sees Chula's caution that she made for her, and she kind of has that meltdown moment, like she breaks down the walls. And it's like, it felt rushed.
It did 100% felt rushed.
But I love the themes and messages of the show.
Yeah. I wish I could agree. The themes of this movie are racist in the same formula that they've used in countless minority films. I will caveat, I did
Would
not
that be
think that when the credits rolled, though.
would that
I
be a
did
theme,
not
or is
think
that
that.
just more just the plot in general?
It's a theme. It's a running theme, and it's the same theme that's getting redundant and
Mm.
almost as if they can't tell another side of us, minorities in
Like
general.
they're afraid to.
They're afraid to, or they just don't have the proper staff to tell the story.
So I have to say, it's probably, if you look at the
Because
writers, that's, you write with what you know.
exactly, and this movie, this show was just badass character that stands on her own and was estranged from her family, lost both parents. Like, she should have been an individual, standalone, badass character. The family could have been in it. Those could have been the stakes. She could have wanted to protect them without having to reconnect and heal all that in a 5 episode, really in 1 episode. They didn't have to do that. That was rushed, poorly written, and it's almost as if, oh, it's a minority film, it's a minority show. We got to bring it back to family. Like, I get that that is a huge component of Native, Indigenous, and minority cultures in general is family. But my son pointed out that it has been the only type of film they make about us now. Every superhero minority film is becoming the same story retold. And I know Marvel does the same formula over and over, but it's not just Marvel. The grandma got powers at the end, just like in Blue Beetle. Like, it was cool at first to see it. Now it's starting to be a little disrespectful. And I was blind
Like,
to
think
it.
out of
I
the
was
box.
totally, exactly. I'm a Marvel fanboy. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I didn't like the fifth episode regardless,
Yeah.
but I did not see what my son saw. And he's a little more into writing than I am. So he explained how bad the writing was. So we looked it up, and there was not a native writer on any of the episodes. Not a single native writer on any of these episodes telling these stories of these people. And the two head writers for the show were Amy Reardon, and I think it's Marion Dairy. So they've worked on previous shows like Supernatural, Charmed, Better Call Saul was another show they've written for. So nothing like what this show is. And I get it. Writers can jump from story to story if they get the beats, maybe.
At the end of the
But
day,
this
you got to
was
write
something.
with what you know.
Exactly. We've seen this cast and what they can do with amazing writers. Go and watch Reservation Dogs, and you will see hilarious comedy. But when it gets serious, it gets heavy.
Oh, it
and
cuts you
it's
to your core.
so respectful of the culture and the heritage because it's being told by natives, portrayed by indigenous individuals. This show was casted beautifully with pretty much the same cast as Reservation Dogs, but they weren't in the writer's room. I don't know how much input they had into the story. And by episode 5, it doesn't feel like they had much, because it was campy, it was watered down, and it did not. I get what they were trying to do. There were great parts of this movie that really resonated with me. And yeah, a little bit had to do with family. The scene when she sees her mother, and her mother's her mother's dead. She's before her.
Oh yeah.
And she sees the pain in her daughter, and she tells her, "You're hurting. Like, life has been hard for you." I was in tears for that scene. She's connecting with her mom, and her mom's telling her to let it go. And she's like, "I can't. I don't know how. It hurts." I'm getting teared up just talking about it now. It had beautiful moments, man. It had beautiful moments in it. But then they're just cheapened in episode 5.
It was rushed, and
it was rushed, and
no one can let go pain that quickly, especially years of it. I'm sorry, like you're not a few hours. Like, okay, like yes, I know, like there's plenty of times like, okay, I gotta put this to the side and focus on saving the day here. But at the end of the day, it's like you still got to deal with all that, and I feel like we didn't get enough of moments with Maya dealing with that, not only with herself but with her family.
Exactly, and the scene, the beautiful scene you talked about at the table. We had that. It was heavy. We had this tense separation. And then the next episode, we're all good. We're all on the same team.
You're welcome to the cookout.
We're the Avengers. No, it's crazy to go from a scene with her mother like that was so powerful. It reminded me of Thor in Endgame when he sees his mom, except not as comedic, more of a serious tone. So there's also the ancestral origins that you talked about, the black and white film, the creation story of the Choctaw people. That was well done. For 4 episodes, I was on board with several components of the show. It just feels like they rushed it, and they didn't know how to land that plane, so it ended up crashing into the ground.
And it makes you wonder how authentic that final graphic is at the end. It's like, we appreciate the gratitude for the influence in this show. And it's like, really? Why were none of them writers?
There's no one who can write in the Choctaw tribe. No screenplay writers. You couldn't bother. No, I don't buy it. I'm sorry. Reservation Dogs had indigenous writers, indigenous directors, indigenous producers. Why was this any different? It's under the same Disney umbrella. I don't get how, was this show not important enough? I don't know. I
don't want to give excuses, but I feel like the writer's strike had a lot to do with it.
That could be that the writer's strike was impending and they had to rush the ending. But that doesn't excuse not having any native writers on the cast.
Absolutely not.
So I blame all the failings of this on that fact. The lack of representation in the writer's room. The reason Black Panther was so good, because Ryan Coogler knew how to tell his perspective of his culture.
Absolutely.
And it lands. It lands because you have the right individuals writing the story.
Yeah, absolutely.
This one, unfortunately, did not. So that affected my overall
great
thoughts.
Moments that are just great for like young children. This world's like, I haven't seen that before on a big screen or on a streaming series before. Yeah. Like seeing like the origins of lacrosse for the first time. Like it was an incredible scene, and to find out
we were talking about it a little bit before, like the Cherokee and the Choctaw and the tribes, and seeing that there was these sprawling cityscapes before there was ever any colonizer stepping foot on the land. There was a civilization here of people who interacted, who had commerce, who had farming. They had everything they needed.
And then their own police force.
Oh my God. I got educated with this show. Like I said, there's highlights. The Light Horsemen.
Oh yeah.
Knew nothing about them. I had never heard it. I didn't even know it was real. I thought it was something made up for Marvel, but no. You said upon further research, it's a real thing. It was a real thing that wasn't taught to us. We didn't know anything about the Light Horsemen. Probably because what they were policing was a lot of colonizers coming in and taking what wasn't theirs. So
that checks out.
That checks out. It really does. Out. So there were moments, there were parts, but it just didn't land the plane. It Game of Thrones did. And I keep saying it, but it's just so frustrating that happened. It didn't have to be so campy. It didn't have to end on that note. We could have had a
more
great
episodes,
character.
And we needed more influence.
Yes, she needed to get her own redemption arc. You brought this up before the show. Loki lost his father, lost his mother, lost his family, and then has to go on his own redemption arc as a standalone badass character. Maya deserved that. She should have got that story.
To be fair, To be fair, we've had 10 plus years with Tom Hiddleston as Loki. We've only
Yes.
had about a year and a half with Miss Cox.
Yes, and I hope it is not the end. I hope we get more of
Oh, yes.
Echo. I am so excited,
That's
so
what it's got
excited.
me interested in the comics. Is like I want to see where this character would interact in the Secret Wars or Secret Invasion. Like,
Yes. Speaking of place, what are your final thoughts? Where do you
oof.
place this? What rating do you give Echo?
I've been going back and forth between a 6 and a 7, and I think just to be fair, I'm gonna do a 6.5 out of 10.
6.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
That is not a bad rating. It's okay, and it's not great.
It's not my favorite MCU series,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not the worst piece of MCU property I've seen before. Where there's a whole bunch of movies and series we could talk about that just kind of dropped the ball.
Yep, 100%. Overall, I still think it's worth the watch. I do still
Absolutely.
think it's worth the
If
watch.
you've seen
The
Hawkeye, you need to watch this.
Yeah, the first 4 episodes are full of promise. And I hope, like I said, we get to see more of the character. The Daredevil cameo, chef's kiss. The end credit scene was so good. Mayor Fisk, like they
Oh,
hint at that, and Daredevil Born Again. So the setup for that, Marvel always nails the setup for the next thing. They always get you hyped for it. I can't wait to see more Fisk. I can't wait to see more Echo hopefully interact with other characters. Maybe run into the Punisher, Jessica Jones. Like, who knows where she goes next? I just hope they do it justice and treat her like they did the first 4 episodes and stick the landing this time. Overall, I rated a 7 out of 10. There were great parts, but the ending really, really sours the whole show for me.
maybe we'll get a new suit.
Maybe. I hope so. I hope we just stick to the one she had. Episode
Yeah,
1 through 4. It was
yeah.
practical. She's a
Tactical.
badass. Tactical and practical. So yeah, that's our thoughts on Echo. Let us know what you thought. If you made it all the way to the end of review, thank you for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.